Hey, welcome everyone. We're excited to have you. This is the Alumni Law Student Panel for the College of Liberal Arts. So we're going to give just a minute to let everybody come in through the waiting room. We'll start with introductions here in just a minute. Okay, I'm sure we'll get, thank you, Angel. All right. I'm sure we'll have a few stragglers, but let's get started here. So, good evening, everyone. My name is Katie Wysocki. I serve as the director of the Career Enrichment Network in the College of Liberal Arts. We're excited to have all of you here today. Hope you were also able to participate in the law school fair that was held in the hub as well. So we are definitely focused on graduate school right now in our office and across campus. We're so excited to have three alumni with us to share their experience. This workshop focuses on those in law school. So we're all so interested in getting there. It would be great to have more information on what happens when you're there. So we're so grateful to have all of you. I'm going to start with a few introductions so you can hear some background. Um, Aba Agray is our 3L at Fordham University School of Law. She is a legal intern in Fordham's Federal Litigation Clinic, where she works on complex civil and criminal matters for clients charged with federal crimes. This summer, she worked at a plaintiff side law firm, Whites in Luxembourg, where she worked on a mass tort litigation, helping to seek damages for plaintiffs injured by a defective knee implant. During the summer after 1L, she worked for a public defender's office in the criminal defense practice. Helping disadvantaged groups and promoting social justice were the driving forces that led Miss Agray to law school. She has recently started a YouTube channel, Audacity with Abba, where she offers law school advice. Before pursuing her law degree, she graduated from Penn State University in 2022 with dual majors in criminology and psychology. While at Penn State, some of her roles were vice president of the Multicultural Undergraduate Law Association, psychology teaching assistant, intern with Penn State's Restorative Justice Initiative, and owner of Abacadabra Lashes, where she applied eyelash extensions. I think I trip over that every year, but I love the name. So thank you for being here for your third year. Ayana Ellis is our 2L at Quinnipiac University School of Law. She has an interest in entertainment law and plans to help marginalized communities, providing them with knowledge about the law and informing them about their rights. Before pursuing her law degree, she graduated from Penn State University in 2020 with a women's gender and sexuality studies major. While at Penn State, some of her roles were public relations manager for Student Minority Advisory and Recruitment Team, or SMART, and volunteer coordinator of the Campus Activity Board. She currently runs a YouTube channel, iNaturals, detailing her law school journey and providing advice on all things law school. She is currently the vice president of BLSA and previously held the role of the 1L regional representative. She is a competition member of the Society for Dispute Resolution. This summer, she is a legal intern at the state attorney's office and the Department of Social Services. She's involved in creating legislation with justice involved waivers to allow recently released inmates continued Medicare and has prepared case files and presented the files at arraignments in court. Thank you for joining us. And Hope is our 1L. At Thomas R. Klein School of Law of Duquesne University, she has an interest in both family law and criminal law and hopes to use her knowledge and resources to better the lives of those she interacts with. Before pursuing her law degree, she graduated from Penn State University in 2024 with a Bachelor of Arts degree in political science and criminology, as well as a minor in ethics. During her time at Penn State, she was active in Lion Ambassadors, Penn State Tour Guides, UPUA, and worked for undergraduate admissions. You all have done such amazing work, and we're so excited to have you back as alum. For everyone here, I definitely have questions to ask of our panelists, but also welcome any questions in the Q&A. So I will be monitoring that as well. I ask that you use the Q&A instead of the chat. It's just easier to organize on my end. But just to kick things off first, how did you all decide on law school? This is the $1 million question that I ask students every day in career coaching appointments. What was your decision to do so? Anyone like to start? How about you, Hope? You made the decision the most recent.
Yeah, I can start. Hi everyone. I am kind of a cliche in that I kind of always wanted to go to law school. Ever since I was probably honestly in middle school, I had a pocket constitution that I would carry around, and I just really wanted to, continue learning. And I kind of became more serious about it, obviously, in college. I talked to family and friends who were attorneys and kind of made sure that I was making the right decision because it is a big commitment. It's a lot of money, a lot of time. And yeah, I just kind of decided that this is what I wanted to do. I've always wanted to work in law, and my high school was also a magnet program. So, for those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically you have a specialization in your public school, and mine was law and public policy. So I took intro to law, torts, trial advocacy, all in high school, and that really also definitely made me even more secure in that choice to continue on to the law field.
Great. Thank you.
I can go next.
Okay, thank you.
So when I was at Penn State, I really liked criminology. Although I had also a major in psych, I felt like I was more drawn to learning about the criminal justice system. And the more that I learned, I wanted to make an impact. And I felt like going to law school was the best option in order to do that. I would have more power to potentially change laws one day or things of like in that field. Yeah, I had some doubts at first because I was like, well, I don't really like talking in front of people and etc. But like learning the law is like way more than that. And I was good with research and writing, and I felt like I really had those strengths from my psychology degree. And you can always learn and build your skills once you get to law school. And I feel like I really improved. So like those are the reasons why I wanted to go.
Great. Thank you. Diana?
Hello, everyone. So I think in high school, I knew that I wanted to go to law school. I had participated in this mock trial. Was it? It was like a moot court, but not in the sense of what it means in law school. So it was a program that essentially helped students who were getting suspended. So instead of being suspended, we would give them alternatives, like trying to do community service so that they were still within school learning and not missing those days due to like the difficult behavior. So I was thinking like, okay, I wanted to work within the criminal justice system. And then I think TV played a huge role. Every time you saw a lawyer, they was in the courtroom working with the criminal justice system. So I thought, oh yeah, that seems fun. And then just taking my women's studies major, I learned there were like way more things to do within the legal field because you learn that it's not just criminal justice or corporate big law. That's what like everybody feels like you got to choose in between, but you learn very quickly. There's a lot that you can do within the legal field. Um, but yeah, I think my main purpose at first was to work within the criminal justice system as like a public defender because I wanted to help people get out of the system. And then like just having that experience, I learned more about entertainment law, which seems like really interesting to me, trying to help people get their stories out there and creatives just like knowing their rights. As you can hear in my bio, a big part was getting legal knowledge in order to pass it down to other people. So I think that's like just still my big thing as to why I wanted to go to law school and what I find consistently true for myself.
Did any of you, so why law school is a huge question, right? And the next question that everyone asks is, what do you want to practice? What's your focus, right? Would any of you give any advice to our students who are contemplating that or just not so sure? And what I've heard is that wait till law school and that's going to influence you. I'm kind of hearing that from some of you. Would any of you like to speak to that?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So I'm a 1L and I still don't know what I want to do. I feel like that's very common. Most of the people that are in like my classes, they have kind of an idea, but also we haven't actually been able to do any law. And so your kind of first summer after your 1L year, you have your first internship usually, and that's where you can kind of test something out and see if that field of law is interesting to you. And then you can also kind of try out different things through internships, externships, and future summer internships. But yeah, you do not have to come into law school being like, I'm going to be a criminal defense attorney and that's what I'm going to do. Coming in just knowing that you enjoy learning about the law and that you want to, make the world a better place, as simple as that, is enough. And even just taking classes that are more specialized in your second and third years also kind of helps you narrow it down.
Great. Go
I would
ahead,
say I
Ayana, did you want
agree. I agree. I don't feel like you have to know. Like even me going into law school thinking I wanted to do being a public defender, you really don't know until you go and get that experience. And I feel like you have this perception of what you believe the career to be, but it's so much different once you're there. And I feel like there's also just this misconception as well when you're going to law school that people immediately want to practice law and be an attorney, but some people come to law school for just to have a JD and have an advantage in other careers. You'll be surprised. Some people come here to be just agents and just how important the legal knowledge is for a career like that. And so when I came in, I'm just like, okay, well, everybody is here to be an attorney. And it's like, oh, no, I don't want to practice. I just want to come here and get the knowledge that I need in order to go forward. It's just like a learning curve. I really feel like it is because, like I said, there's a whole bunch of different types of law that you can do. And it's not known how many types of law you can do until you're actually taking these classes and you're like, oh, I never thought that about doing that. That sounds really interesting. And so, yeah, I feel like it's continuously learning. You don't really have to know what you want to do.
Yeah, I would just echo the same things that everyone else said. And as a 3L, I'm like surprised that a lot of the people that I'm friends with still don't know what they want to do. And you just kind of end up in something where whoever's offering the job at the time and kind of go from there. Like I started thinking I wanted to be in public defense, and I had a summer where I had that experience for 3 months. And now that I've had that experience, I'm like, that's not for me. And I've kind of shifted my focus into civil litigation and potentially like suing on behalf of people who have been wrongfully convicted or prisoners' rights cases. So instead of like defending them, maybe suing on their behalf. So it's just like as you learn more, you start shifting your focus.
I'm so excited to see a question come in. I wanted to just ask one more with this idea of why law school and Abba, I'm going to ask you as the seasoned law student here, have you seen any great examples of why not to go to law school?
Hmm. Um, a lot of people are going to law school because they want to get a high salary, which is great. But if you're not someone who has a strong work ethic and is willing to do go the extra mile for this, then maybe you shouldn't because there's a lot of other ways to get a lot of money, but this type of route is going to really drain you in the end. Not to scare anyone, but like it's very intense and there's a lot of downsides to being a lawyer. So you have to actually want to do the work and not just do it for money or you might burn out.
Thank you. That's a great point. Okay. I many times I've always wanted to be a lawyer. I just it's what I love to argue. I think that's what I want to do. I'm not sure what else I want to do, so I'm just going to go to law school. I think our advice would be to have more of a solid reason It's expensive. It's a lot of work. It's worthwhile if that's the key to your next step in your career journey, but it's good to feel it, right? It's good to know that's the next step in doing so. I have a question in the Q&A, a little bit more specific. And Ayani, you talked a little bit about how, your work with a JD may vary, right? And outside of a lawyer, but have you found that a lot of law students want to work with the government? Are there a lot of opportunities to work with, learn about policy implementation design as a law student?
Hmm. I think it's definitely a lot of experience to learn about policy, just more so reading like legal cases. You have to really analyze why the courts think the way they do, or what reasoning did they use in order to come up with a conclusion. Um, and it just opens your mind up more in order to do a lot of critical thinking and just trying to get into the minds of judges, even though you never know, depending some of the reasoning be conflicting, but I digress. Also, as far as like working in the public sector, I feel like it's way easier possibly than trying to get into law firms, because I know if we're talking from a perspective of like a 1L, I just remember my experience trying to get into a law firm. And I think it really depends on like your connections to get into those positions, since it's not as many. I feel like the public sector is always looking for students in order to get in there. And I think going to those events, trying to talk to not only judges, but different attorneys, they can help provide you with opportunities to get into the public service if that's something that you really desire. Also, talking to your career services, they should also be helping you get into whatever field that you're trying to get into, because your career services has connects as well. So definitely you should have some type of support there in order to help you when you're communicating what do you want out of law school, or what experiences you are targeting or going towards.
I just also wanted to say, I know a lot of people, obviously not everyone in 1L knows what they want to do, but one of the really big perks of working for the government, at least, I don't know if it's nationwide or just in the state of Pennsylvania, is that if you work there for a certain amount of years, there is a student loan forgiveness program. And so that is one thing that my professors are really harping on. So if you are someone that has that kind of leaving in the back of your head, that is an option. I think it's a pretty big commitment. I think it's over 25 years, but so that's a long part of your career, but it is worth it if you are having to go into substantial debt to go to law school.
It is nationwide. It's 10 years. It's a PLSF. So I actually qualify as a public service at Penn State, being a public institution. So it is a great, great resource. Hope, thank you for bringing that up for sure.
The only thing I would add is I was kind of surprised when I got to law school, and we talked about policy sometimes at my school, but it wasn't really a focus. We did have one class, but we didn't talk about changing the law or what could be better about the law and things like that. It was more so just learning what it is, and not so much about what we can do and what like position we can get into to change it.
I will say too, with policy specifically, there are quite a few dual degrees with JD and Masters of Public Policy. If that's something you're interested in, and obviously you can make a appointment with a career coach in the Career Enrichment Network to explore that as possibilities in graduate school. I was just speaking with an alumna today who worked for the CIA. She was sharing that a JD can be helpful if you're interested in the FBI. We obviously, those with a JD background, I have an alum at the Department of Veterans Affairs who works in policy and reform for veterans. So there's definitely a lot of opportunities in the federal government with that JD background, as our panelists have said. It's going to have a lot to do with those internships you do and how you specialize yourself. through that experience in the building of networks, and potentially adding on any of those dual degrees, which aren't always necessary, but there's tons of options that are available. So thank you all so much. I've got tons of questions coming in. I'm going to do my best to think about these in a strategic way. One of the first questions, let's talk a little bit about the finding a law school. When deciding what schools to apply for, what were the main factors you considered? How did you know? How did you know it was the right one? Location is often emphasized in where you want to practice. Is that true for all of you? Hope, would you like to start?
Yeah, I can start. I applied to 10 law schools, kind of all on the northeast part of the US. I really wanted a school that I felt that I like fit into. I really did not want a school that had like a cutthroat reputation. I'm a very chill person and I would much rather be friends with my classmates than enemies. I know that's a common thing because law school is graded on a curve, so it is inherently kind of competitive. For me, I really wanted a school that had a lot of externship opportunities as well as opportunities to do pro bono work. So Duquesne really was a big thing for me. I also looked at bar passage rates because I do want to practice law as an attorney, and so I do have to pass the bar. And the bar is expensive to take more than one time. So I looked at that. Duquesne has the 6th highest bar passage rate in the US. And I honestly really looked at finances. I was really wanting to make sure that I was not going to take on a ton of debt. And part of the reason I chose Duquesne, I mean, I love the school, I really do, but a large part of it was because I did get a scholarship. When I got the financial aid package, it pretty much made up my mind. But yeah, I definitely wanted to find a place that I felt like it was a strong community. And as far as it goes for kind of going where you want to practice, I don't know where I want to practice. I'm not from Pittsburgh, I'm from Baltimore. And when I talked to my professors, they kind of explained the bar and the UBE. They're recently kind of changing the bar into the universal bar. And from my understanding, if I pass in Pennsylvania, I will get like a high enough score to qualify for the state of Maryland. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's how I understand it. So for that, I mean, I don't know if I would go to California if you're from like New York and want to practice in New York, but as for kind of those regional areas, I think that it's pretty easy. I will say it is more difficult because you won't have as big of a network in whichever area that you want to practice in if you don't go to school there, but I'm sure the 2 and 3Ls can explain more about that because they're more on that topic.
Just a comment about the UBE. I know there's 38 states under the UBE, and the UBE is the Uniform Bar Exam. And essentially, if you receive a score high enough to on that test, then you can practice in those jurisdictions. But you have to look at the different states because I know sometimes they have additional tests that you have to take. So I know New York, for instance, is a UBE state, but you have to take the NYLE along with the MPRE, which is the responsibility ethics test for lawyers before sitting down to actually take the bar. So I know it's like state by state, but typically if you score high enough on the UBE, you can indeed practice in those states. I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember what the question was.
How you picked your school? What were the factors for you? Did you consider location? Someone specifically asked about the top 14 versus others. What were your guiding lights in picking your school?
Um, Actually, I feel like I was kind of like naive, even though like just trying to figure out how to do it since I am a first generation student. I did hear a lot of people echo the location thing, and I think location is really a big thing that I wish I would have thought about because I know, like they say, if you know for sure you want to practice in a specific city, then I feel like you should be applying to schools in that city. And I'm not saying that if you do go to a school in a different city that there's no way to get into that market. I do think it's easier to go to events and to meet different attorneys in that city that you're trying to be at. And then like after you graduate, it may be a little bit easier to find jobs within that place. So I chose Quinnipiac because I knew it was close enough to New York. And I was thinking, okay, well, I can just take a quick train to New York. But obviously, New York's market is a beast. So really, you have to really advocate for yourself and make those connections and being able to travel. But then with that in mind, knowing that, oh, well, you're going to have to pay money in order to go back and forth there. That doesn't take in consideration you being in school, taking classes, and being able to make time. And I feel like something I've learned very quickly about being in law school, it really is about who you know and who can help you, essentially. It's a career about relationships. And so I wish location is something that I would have thought, like I was thinking about it, but I feel like I wish I would have been a little bit more strategic. Something else, I know scholarships is a big thing as well. Um, Compared to like the different schools that I did apply to, the school that I'm at now, they didn't give me the biggest package, but I thought me being close to New York, me being closer to home, in the city that I wanted to practice in was enough for me to sacrifice it, along with just the feeling I got when I came to the school. I came down here, taught to admissions, just met different students, and the environment felt very welcoming and inviting, and not like people were against me or that I was going to not have the support that I needed, because me being in Connecticut and away from from Philadelphia, and so even though Philadelphia is like 3 to 4 hours away, that's still 3 to 4 hours away from family, and just like navigating this new city by myself, essentially. So definitely, I feel like location, um, definitely the financial aid package, and also the bar passage rate. I think that definitely is something to pay attention to if you do want to take the bar, essentially, because then you can see like, okay, well, are these people passing the test? And like Hope said, the test is very expensive depending on what city you're in. And typically you don't want to have to take the test more than once because it's going to be funds. But definitely bar passage rate, financial aid, and location, I think are the big three for me that I think I would stress wholeheartedly.
So when I first started making my list at the schools I wanted to go to, I was putting on a whole bunch of T14 schools and just thinking about like, oh, what has the biggest name? But as I started like speaking to more admissions counselors and doing law school visits, I realized that it's not all about that. And I ended up choosing a school in New York City because I thought I could see myself working in the city, but now that I'm here, like my mind has changed a little bit. Yeah, I chose Fordham because they actually offered me the most money of the other schools that I applied to. The other school that was compared to was Seton Hall, and I ended up choosing the school with the bigger name, I guess. And also when I visited for the admitted school, like admitted students day, I felt like the environment was nice. It was very collegial environment, and the professors that we spoke to just seemed very welcoming. Also, the cost of attendance is something to keep in mind because in New York City, it's not just like the tuition. Everything is very expensive as far as like the housing and your groceries and transportation. All that stuff is going to add up in the end. So you should definitely consider that. And also Fordham, when I was accepted, I asked for more money and they agreed. So that was a big thing for me. Another thing, if you're interested in like public interests, there are certain schools that are like CUNY, I forget what it stands for, City University of New York. That's really good for public interest, but it's not as expensive as like Fordham, for example. And so maybe if that's what you want to do, you want to go to a school that's great for what you're interested in, and you will get like a better cost as well.
And
Thank
I
you
also
all.
wanted
Yeah,
to
go
make
ahead.
a comment about the T14 thing, because I know that was like a real big thing, especially around the time I was like applying to schools. And one thing I want to say about the T14 list, I feel like just because a school is not in the T14 doesn't make them inadequate. There are certain things in schools that you look for that can provide you more than probably a T14 will. I know I've heard a lot from T14 students that they push for you to go to big law. So even if, say, for instance, you want to go into the public interest, you probably don't need to go into a T14. Or even if you want to do big law, there are a lot of students who come from different schools outside of that who do end up in big law if that's something you want to do. But I don't think the value should simply be based on a ranking system. Actually, a lot of schools opted out of being put on the list because of its subjectiveness and how it was like discriminating against people essentially of going to these certain schools, like this exclusiveness. But definitely I would say make sure you're really looking into the schools that you really want to go to and see what they offer. Because just because it's like a Harvard or Columbia, maybe you have people who graduated from those schools and are professors at those different schools who can provide you with just as much knowledge as at a T14.
Thank you for that. It truly is finding the right fit because you need to be happy in your environment in order to do well, right? Let's skip to everybody's favorite topic, and that's the LSAT. Any advice to our students when thinking about the LSAT and preparing for it? What did you do? What worked for you? Maybe what didn't work for you? What would you suggest to our students who are considering it?
I would tell people to start early. I went into it thinking I was going to take it once and be done. I was like, no second LSAT for me. I ended up taking it twice, literally got the same score. Still really angry about that. But I would say start earlier so that when you take it the first time, you can have the option to retake it. I forget what months I took it, but I ended up taking it a second time in I believe October. Um, Maybe I took it on the Michigan game day last year at Michigan at Penn State. And the reason for that is that I ended up submitting my applications before I got my second LSAT grade back, which you're totally allowed to do, but it added stress on to me because basically if you submit them and you have an LSAT score pending, they just kind of table you for the time being. And so for that reason, I wish I started early and took an earlier LSAT than I had done. So I took the first LSAT and I think I had 2 months to restudy and take it again. But I wish I had done that earlier so that I could have gotten applications in earlier because most law schools are rolling admission. So some people say that it's better. Some people argue it has no difference. But if some people think it's better to get them in early, might as well want to just get them in early. Plus, then you get to be done and enjoy the rest of your year. So that would be my advice. I did like a study program that I paid for. Most of them are pretty pricey, to be completely honest. So I kind of had to make an agreement with my parents, like I'm going to take this seriously. I didn't go to any extracurriculars. Like I was really locked in. I would come home from class and I would study because I did study during the school year, and that's just kind of a sacrifice you have to make. That's why part of me wishes I did a gap year. I don't regret not doing it, but I do think it would be helpful if you're kind of not someone that can push away from the distractions of state college. And it also would be nice if I was working and could save up some money before going to law school. So that's always an option that I tell people to think about because it is helpful. But if you want to push through, you definitely can. I did it successfully. So yeah.
Um, Sorry. I blinked out for a second. It's been how many years? 2 years at this point since I took the LSAT. I took the test 3 times. I did several different programs, Blueprint, but I think the most helpful one for me was LSAT Demon. And I think it was really helpful for me because I was able to pay on a month-to-month basis rather than putting like a bulk amount forward. And also because I had an LSAC fee waiver at that point, I also got a discount on the program as well. I know the LSAT has changed. I know at that point when I was taking it, I had logic games, logical reasoning and reading comprehension, and I think they just dropped logic games. But I felt like that program that I used, LSAT Demon, was really helpful because they allowed me to have access to practice tests and to drill questions. And also they provided explanations as to why each answer was either incorrect or why the correct answer was correct, and gave like great advice as far as like blind reviewing. And blind reviewing is simply after you take a practice test, instead of looking at what the correct answers are, you literally do not time yourself and just go through it without those time conditions in order to see if you actually knew the information, or was it a thing because you were circling just what you thought in the moment in order to get through. But yes, LSAT Demon was the most helpful for me.
So I went straight through to law school, and I knew that's what I was gonna do um, by my junior year. And so I did Blueprint. It was pretty expensive, I will say, but I just like locked in for 3 months, the end of May till like the beginning of August. And I knew I was only gonna take it once because I wanted to apply early because of the benefits of that, more money or just having better chances. And I also was trying to be done with that process by the time my senior year started because I didn't want to like jeopardize trying to study for the LSAT and prepare for law school while trying to maintain my GPA. I didn't want like that to overlap too much. So I just decided to get it all done. And no matter what score I got, I was planning on like applying. And I did end up getting that score. So I was fine with that. And I went through with it.
Thank you all
But
for
I will say, I don't know, I wouldn't recommend what I did. Like, don't rush the LSAT. And if you get a higher score, you may get more scholarship. So that's something to consider.
I
Generally,
just,
from our office, we
oh,
suggest to start studying in your third year in the second semester to be
Mm.
considering and have the dates on your radar for either June or the August or September, October timeframe if you need to have that time to take it again and have time to study in between. Does that sound about right for you all?
Yeah, I took it in June. The only thing that I would say about that is for me, it was difficult because my lease ended. And so, like, 2 weeks before the LSAT, I was moving home. So it was just kind of like jumbled because then it was like, I don't know, it was just very hectic. But I wish that I took it um during I had taken the LSAT and then I immediately went to study abroad. And so I kind of wish I took it during August. But because I was studying abroad, obviously I couldn't take it then. So that's just one thing that I would have wished I did. It was August, get my score, and then decide to retake it. So
Yeah. Ayana, you had something to add?
I'm trying to, okay, so it was like two comments based off what Hope said. As far as like when I took the LSAT in my junior year. Was it junior year? It had to be my senior year, November. And then I took it again in 2020 and then again in 2022 because I entered law school into 2023. And then also I know she was saying that man, you said something. Oh, about when handing in your application. I will say that I've heard many admission counselors say that they rather your application be whole rather than trying to hand it in just on September 1st. If you feel like that's not your best product, then I'm telling you that I feel like you will have better odds really taking time with your application and submitting it so that you can have your best chances with the getting into the school.
I'm gonna ask one more question about the application process, and then we'll get into students are questioning your workload and work-life balance in law school. So one of my questions prior to that is, what advice would you give to students considering law school? Any hidden, gems for their application? Anything they should be engaged with now? I know you all were engaged in really great leadership roles when you were here on campus. What do you think would help them as undergrads to prepare for their application process?
I saw something in here about legal internships, Leah. I personally, from the admissions officers I talked to, like, you do not need to have legal internships. I also, obviously this is a liberal arts panel, but like you can be any major and apply to law school. You don't have to do criminology or political science. I have a ballet performance major. That's one of my friends. Like she took gen ed classes, obviously, that are more like staple education courses, but like ballet performance was her undergraduate degree, and she's in class with me. I would say stay organized. Once you kind of create that list, I had like Google Docs and I had a folder for each school with all of the things that they needed. And like Ayana said, definitely like don't rush and try to submit things. The LSAT was the one thing that I was waiting for when I had submitted. I had already perfected all of my essays. I was feeling very confident with all of those. So when it comes to your essays and everything, really put a lot of time and effort into them. They always talk about how common it is that they get an essay and it mentions the name of a different school because someone just forgot to change it. And, you know, those kind of attention to detail things are definitely things that they do look for. I don't think they're going to throw your file away immediately, but it's definitely something that you should really think about, making sure that you're putting in your best effort and your best self. I'll also say, specifically for liberal arts, since we do tend to be going to law school more than other colleges on campus, make sure that you're getting letters of recommendation early. Do not wait for the last second because your professors will already be filled up. I don't remember when I asked my professors for their letters of recommendation, but I believe it was literally the first week of senior year, and I ended up applying in like November, which was kind of cutting it close. I would even say like over the summer, send them a little feeler email. But for me, at least, I had 2 letters of recommendations from professors and one from someone who had seen me in a leadership role. So yeah, that's kind of what I have for that question.
And going off that, I just wanted to say, try to be intentional about creating those relationships to get your letters of recommendation. Like for what I did with my psychology professor, I took his class once, I did well in it, and I just figured, what if I take another class with him and keep going to his office hours and building that relationship? And then I became his teaching assistant. So I was very comfortable with having that person as my letter of recommendations writer. And then as far as majors go, definitely choose something that you like and choose experiences that you're passionate about, because there's no point in trying to put a legal internship on there just for show, because they want to see like a story with your application. I know with me, like my criminology degree and then my restorative justice internship and my personal statement all came together in the end and showed that I'm coming to law school because I have a commitment to the criminal justice system and helping people and trying to create reform. And it all like came together like that. And then also try to take on a leadership role if you can, but just doing things that you're passionate about.
So I would say, pay attention to your grades, something that people kept saying, but literally, just trying to make sure that you do your best, because I know a GPA is something that the schools look into along with your LSAT, and the GPA is something you actually can control to some extent. Also, participate in activities that you actually find interest in. So don't just do activities just because you feel like, oh, well, they're going to see I'm extra involved in school. You want to actually be able to talk about those things that you did with like passion and just like, oh, this brought me true interest. And you don't want to be doing things that essentially don't make you feel well inside. Definitely would encourage that. I echo what the other panelists said about building genuine relationships with your professors, because yes, it's important to get those recommendation letters early, but you want to make sure the person who is writing the recommendation can actually talk about you, not just look at your resume and be like, oh, they did everything on this resume, but no, they know you genuinely as a person and want to fight for you in their letter just as much. Also, I don't think it hurts like doing legal internships. I don't think it's required for sure because I didn't do any legal internships in undergrad. I did take 3 years of a gap year and literally was working at an insurance company. Um, I feel like getting experience in the legal field in fields that you may feel like you want to gives you better perspective of how it may be, but I wouldn't say it's necessary, but I also wouldn't say that it's a bad thing to do as well. I think is my main
I just
advice.
wanted
Oh, and personal statements are important. Definitely, because you'll never know. Like literally, I had got waitlisted to Georgetown and literally wasn't in their 75% or even their 25%. But I feel like they liked my application enough in order to like, oh, second guess it possibly.
I just wanted to say there's two questions about letters of recommendation. The amount that you need is based on the schools you're applying to. They will give you a requirement, so that's not something that we can necessarily answer. And can recommendations only come from professors? That's also dependent on the school. So some
Mhm.
schools require 2 from professors, some require 1 from professors. And if you're having someone else write your letter of recommendation, it should be someone that you worked with professionally, whether it be through a leadership role on campus or through a job. You should not be having your neighbor, your mom, anyone. Obviously, I feel like that's common knowledge, but make sure it's definitely someone that actually is going to add on to your application. So
Absolutely. And feel free to send your resume when you're asking for a recommendation. I suggest going to office hours too. Like all of our panelists are saying, you want to have a relationship with them before you ask. So make sure you're connecting with them. Send the resume. They may only know you in one light. So this way they can see your holistic development and other engagement. Quality versus quantity with your clubs and organizations. They would rather see you a leader in 2 than a member of 10. I think we all know what it means to just be a member of 10 and go to meetings. They're looking for you to really be able to speak to it and that passion, as our panelists were saying. Um, Interviewing. Did any of you have to interview for your programs?
No.
Okay. Have you heard of anyone having to interview?
Yes.
I would
Okay.
say, at least in my experience, the people that I know that had to interview were either if they were in the running for a like full coverage scholarship, or if it was at one of those more prestigious top 14, like my friend goes to Brown and he had to interview. But I didn't have to interview for any of the schools that I applied to or got accepted to.
Great. In the chat, I put 2 resources for our students online. One is the pre-law advisor here at Penn State. Kathy Guerin is a DUS advisor and also the pre-law advisor. She offers a variety of workshops, why law school, how to prepare, personal statements. I go to her workshops. Um, if you go to one of her webinars, you can then meet with her one-on-one. Again, she is an attorney. She's engaged with the LSAC. She is understanding of the updates to the LSAT. So any student I meet with that mentions law school, I suggest her. So I'm sharing that with everyone. Anyone here meet with Kathy?
Yes.
Yeah, yes, great.
I
She's been
wanted to
here.
make a, well, sorry. I just wanted to make a quick comment because I know we put answered for like the scholarships, but
Mhm.
there are outside scholarships besides the ones at school. So I definitely would recommend going on Access Lex. They have a bunch of different scholarships and they give out a lot of money because as you guys know, law school is very expensive. So definitely trying to get as much aid money and also scholarship money as you can in order to make that transition easier because I know the ABA really discourages full-time students from working. So definitely needing money in order to like live throughout those like months, even though they do give you a refund if you take out loans, but sometimes loans is simply just not enough. So trying to like maximize whatever money you can, which I think Hope was saying as well, just like being able to take that gap year and being able to build money. Money is like really a big thing in law school, for sure. So just trying to set yourself up in a situation where you will be fine. Work well with not working if you do choose not to work during your first year of law school.
Thank you so much, Ayana, for adding that, and thank you, Hope, for adding that to the chat as well. Our students are curious about your work-life balance in law school. Hope, specifically with 1L, what they should expect that first year. And then for our 2L and 3L, what you would have done different that first year now that you guys have advanced onto your second, third year. So Hope, we'll start with you.
Okay, I've been getting this question a lot from like literally everyone I know. For the most part, I don't feel like I'm drowning. I am staying afloat. But I definitely do not have as much time as I had in undergrad. Um, I would say the biggest thing for me is that law school itself is a huge learning curve. Even the notes that you're taking, it's a very different way of taking notes than it was in undergrad. And so I definitely have seen myself, I've only been in law school for 7 weeks. And even in those 7 weeks, I definitely have become faster at taking notes, like understanding case briefs, easier to pick out the issues and stuff, which might not make sense, but it will if you go to law school. I would say last week was rough. It was midterms week. So on top of reading, I was also studying and taking midterms. But one thing about me is like, I'm not going to give up sleep. If it's not done by my bedtime, it's not getting done. And so I think it's really important to set those boundaries because I know you're laughing, Ayana, but you do not want to see me if I don't have my 8 hours of sleep. I am mean to everyone. And so I definitely have certain boundaries. um, I always watch Dancing with the Stars. I FaceTime my college roommates and watch it every single Tuesday and yesterday because they had a makeup. So there's just like very small things that I make sure that I'm doing because I have already seen people definitely struggling, people who just are not taking time for themselves. I have a walking pad, and so at my desk that I'm sitting at, it like rises, and I walk on my walking pad while I do my work. And I think the biggest importance is just really making sure that you're taking time for yourself and listening to yourself. Obviously, your education is very important, but you cannot succeed in your education if you yourself are really struggling. And so making sure that you're prioritizing your mental health. For me, sleep. I need to sleep. And yeah, so it's definitely overwhelming. I haven't even started doing, applying to jobs, interviewing for jobs. So I can only imagine that that's going to be overwhelming. But as of right now, I am happy to say that I'm doing okay. I think it's, you kind of have to have those cutoffs for yourself. But yeah, overwhelming, yes. Doable, also yes.
Hope, that sounds optimistic. I'm happy to see that you're doing pretty well. Because during my 1L, I wouldn't say I was doing well at all. I feel like I was trying to spend so much time doing the readings. And there's like, at one point, I had like 5 different classes, and it was just way too much reading to complete in one night. And I feel like I could have alleviated that issue by creating a better routine and sticking to it. But it's just very hard when your whole life is kind of changing all at once. Like you might be moving to a new city and like it's just a whole lot of things on top of doing 1L. And I was giving up sleep, and I feel like it was just a cycle that was not good. Um, Also, I felt like they made it seem the only thing you could do during your 1L was focus on school. And by doing that, I feel like I focused too much to the point where I was missing like the bigger picture. And I definitely wish I had kept more hobbies outside of law school to give me balance. And then also they say go to office hours, talk to your professors, which is good, but at the same time, if you go in there without any direction or going in there with specific questions, you can just end up getting lost in listening to other people's questions. You're like, oh, wait, do they know like way more than I do? What's going on here? That question is so niche. And then you start like freaking out even more. So definitely review more often. Even if I didn't complete the reading, like still focus on learning what I'm reading and not just doing it for completion. Yes, and then practice exams are very important.
But I had a question come in and they said, if I'm not good at reading, nor do I enjoy it, am I in trouble? Would you say yes?
Um, I think you can overcome it, but that was my issue in the beginning. I felt like I'm just like a slower reader in general, and like I'm trying to understand everything as I go. And it's like maybe you should skim. And also, Quimby is a very big tool that people use in law school. It has like videos that describe what's happening in that case, and it gives you like a summary. So that's a good place to start, and will maybe put you in a better position to skim the reading, come up with questions, and then focus intently during class and focusing on what the professor is saying more so.
Thank you.
I think, yeah, Hope, you're ahead of the game. Follow what Hope is saying. Because definitely my first semester of law school, I was in school from like 9 in the morning to like 8 and 9 at night. It just didn't make sense to me. Just like having classes all day and then reading, and then you have to realize that the reading that you're reading, it has a lot of legal jargon. So you're trying to understand exactly what you're reading as well, which can be very intimidating. And so you taking all these long hours reading, trying to do case briefs on top of that. And a case brief is literally just a summary of everything that you essentially just read, just detailing the facts, issues. Something I had difficulty with is trying to figure out, well, what do you mean? What is the issue? How do you make an issue statement? But literally, you learn that in like your legal writing or your legal skills class, and they break it down for you a little bit better. But like, I was just nervous on like what I was reading and if I was truly understanding, and then just like reading the reading, participating in class and feeling like, oh, I got this, like I understand. And then like you're taking midterms and you're like, oh, maybe I don't understand. So it's like you don't get like not everybody gets midterms. Usually it's your final exam, and that's where you're figuring out like if you really understand everything that you were learning. And I wish I would have like started outlining earlier, and outlining is simply just like a long outline of everything you've done within the semester and trying to break it down whereas though it's digestible for you, that you're essentially possibly going to be tested. You're definitely going to be tested on for the final exam. But I feel like I dealt with not really knowing how to outline or what that really meant for me. So that's why it took longer. And then just listening to different people's advice of like, oh, well, you should be outlining in September, or you should be outlining in October. And then hearing so much conflicting advice, and you're like, oh, well, I don't know. I am a first generation student, so I really didn't have anybody to like lean on as far as like with that type of information, even though like I sought out different information from different people. But I definitely wish I would have gotten the hang of what really outlining was in order to start it earlier. Um, Office hours as well. I will say I wish I would have went to them. So my tactic when I go to office hours, if I don't have a question, I like to regurgitate to the professor what exactly I understood from the lesson that we probably did, and say, oh, well, this is how I understood it, how you taught me. Is this how I'm supposed to be understanding it? And typically you find out if there's errors in the way you're thinking about what that professor was trying to teach you, just to see my face and to also be able to build that relationships. Professors like to see your face and to see that you're essentially trying to learn and trying to understand. In some schools, professors can give you a bump. I know at my school specifically, I think they'll give you like a 1/3 bump of a grade, but that's all on the professor's discretion. And besides that, I feel like it is just really good to get to know your professors, because you have to think I'm not going to say all professors are barred. I'm not sure. Some professors have never like practiced at all and just went into academia, but you never know what kind of connections those people may have in order to connect you with someone who may do something in the interest area that you want to be. So I think definitely having all these lawyers around you are good to like connect with and to definitely just build those relationships. So I definitely wish I would have done that my first year, and definitely sleep, man. You have to do things that you love because I'm still like struggling with that during my 2L years, like just so busy. So making time to really do things that like at least once a day that genuinely brings me happiness, because I feel like you continuously trying to push, you're going to drive yourself crazy. You really have to take time for yourself because if you're not well within everything that you're outputting is not going to be well. So definitely when I say Hope is she's the hit of the game, I'm telling you if watching, because what show did you say you watch on Tuesdays?
Dancing with the
Dancing with the Stars.
Stars.
See,
It's
Dancing with
happening
the
at 8
Stars.
o'clock tonight.
Watching Dancing with the Stars, that brings her happiness, and just like having that schedule and something to look forward to, I think is great. Definitely taking one day off during the week. I felt a lot that like, oh my God, I don't have enough time to take a day off in the week. What are you guys are talking about? Like, there's readings consistently. Like, it just does not stop. So, creating boundaries with yourself, I will say. If you say you're going to take that day off, then take the day off. Like, the work is still going to be there. You're going to get it done, and the outcome is going to be what it is. But definitely self-care. That's a big one for your
Yeah,
first year.
Fridays are my day off. I just want to say really quickly, I saw someone ask a question about cold calling, and that was something that I was terrified about in law school. And I think it's really important to go back to the culture that we were talking about when picking your law school. I got cold called on day one and grilled, okay? And I did not know what a case brief was. Like it was not good, okay? But the way that my law school works is the other students, when they see that you're struggling, they raise their hand if they know the answer. And at least for the time being, maybe it's just because we're in 1L, our professor understands that you're struggling and you don't know the answer and moves on. And so, yes, it is embarrassing if you don't know the answer, because, like, obviously, you want people to think you're smart, you want to know the answer, but it's not the end of the world. And do not let that discourage you from going to law school. I have really bad anxiety, so I was really nervous about that. And at this point, like I got cold called the other day and I'm not proud of it, but I didn't know the answer. Civ Pro, if you know, you know. And I literally said, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer. And I didn't get kicked out of school. So, my professor was like, figure it out for next time, but it's not as bad, but it is very prevalent, but it's not as embarrassing or scary, in my opinion.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you all for great advice. I always run out of time. I think you all know who've done this with me before. We could do this for 2 hours, 3 hours if we really had the time. So thank you all so much for being here. The last question that was in the Q&A was about gap years and what our other panelists said. What I'm hearing and what we've all shared is that it's an individual choice, but there needs to be a focus on your finances, on your own anxiety, on your own ability. Do you need the time off, or you need to power through and just keep going in that academic mind? That's something we can help you in the Career Enrichment Network to kind of work through and consider, but you have options to take gap years for sure. And that can be helpful if you're really on the fence for law school. So it is wonderful to see you all so much for joining us. This is being recorded and will be shared on our YouTube channel for those who weren't able to make it. Feel free to reach out to the Career Enrichment Network with any questions. Some of our panelists are popping their contact information into the chat. I think we're sharing just with each other, so I'm going to make sure it says everyone and share that with everyone. Let me get Ayana's out there to everyone. Okay. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. All right. Everyone have a wonderful night, and we will see you all soon. All right. Good luck.